This week on the Lords of Grantham podcast, we talk about the entirety of Season 1 of Rivals. What characters won the season? What characters lost? And were the rivalries, the titular rivalries, good enough? Let's find out.
All I do is win, 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 no matter what. Got money on my mind, I can never get enough. And every time I step up in the building, everybody hands go up. And they stay there. And they stay there.
And we are back for the last time for a good amount of time because we don't know about Season 2, but we're going to talk about Rivals again. Corey, what's going on?
I'm feeling good, Dave. How about you?
I'm feeling good. I mean, let's break the fourth wall now.
Okay.
We're recording this one day after our last finale because you're going to be abroad.
I am. I'll be traveling for the next 11 days, starting on Thursday, rather. And, I'll be in Korea. And we can talk about that later, maybe after we talk about Rivals. But, won't be around for the next couple weeks to record.
Yeah, so we wanted to get on top of things, but the way to do that is 2 days in a row. So if things seem a little bland or we have nothing to say at the beginning and the end, it's because that's just how the cookie crumbles when you go 2 days in a row. But then again, news always drops on us in the worst times. So
I can't say that any news has dropped in between yesterday and today for any of the shows that we watch. But Dave, there was a question I meant to ask you over the weekend, and it came into my mind.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that it's like to remind myself to mention to you on the podcast. So you have a child now. It's a newborn, and so you get time off, right?
Yeah, I do.
And so you're taking Mondays and Tuesdays off? Is that what you said? So Dave,
Yes.
the question I have then, what is a weekend?
Wow, that's a good question.
I really want to know from your perspective.
Well, I mean, that is a good... People at work have asked me how it feels, and I gotta say, aside from the baby being wildly unpredictable at 2 months old at this point, it's pretty cool.
Oh, okay.
A weekend is... Because, a weekend for anybody... Because you live in the city, so it's a little different. Renters and homeowners...
It's always a weekend in the city?
Well, the city, you don't have a lawn. You don't have a house to clean.
I mean, I do have an apartment to clean by myself.
You do, yeah. But you also, it's a lot smaller than a house. You don't have a baby to clean up after, grocery shopping to do for a family.
I have to grocery shop for myself. I have to do my laundry. There's a lot of solo stuff you got to do. You take for granted.
Hey, I lived on my own too, but everything on basically one of the greatest things about this 4-day weekend, and I have it until July, thanks to Connecticut's parental paid leave. I can, like, when Sunday rolls along, I don't get that sense of dread that I haven't accomplished the stuff that I need to accomplish to keep my life together.
Wow.
So, which is great because I think there's this sense of, like, what I don't know exactly how to say it, but the Sunday scaries for some people is like, oh no, I got to go back to work. But then for some people, I think it's oh boy, I didn't get anything done this weekend.
Yeah, that happens.
Monday and Tuesday are like, three of the four grandparents are retired, so we have a great support network. So sometimes I'll come over and play with Kieran, and I'll go to the store. So, like, plenty of time to get stuff done.
Does a Friday feel like a weekend?
Friday? Oh my God! I also work in special ed, so like, jumping from 4 days of like home tranquility, as much as a crying 2-month-old is difficult, right into work. It's like a real adjustment for 3 days. So it's like
I can imagine.
Yeah. So Friday feels like Friday. Friday stinks.
Okay.
But it's also there's that sense of Friday relief because I was considering doing work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, take Thursday, Friday off. And I said I would rather be around people that are excited for the weekend than people that are upset that the week is just starting. So what is a weekend? It's a state of mind.
There we go. We have an answer. I think that's a fair answer to the question Maggie Smith once asked.
We're going to need to check back come July because I might be like a weekend. I'm going crazy over here with 2 days. So
yeah, what is your weekend currently? Well, anyways, now that we've got that out of the way, Rivals. So we've been doing a lot of 8-episode one-off shows. We just did the Buccaneers. We did this. I forget what we even did.
Was Belgravia next chapter 8 episodes?
Yeah. 6 or 7 maybe. But yeah, no, we've been knocking them out one after another. But this is one where it didn't feel like they were padding. I feel like you could say that about the other shows where it could have been a 4-episode miniseries maybe, or 5 episodes. But you can clearly tell like they had more than enough material to work with. And from what I understand, this is based off that book series, and there's more material left over for the second season. So I appreciate that there doesn't feel like there's fat on this.
Yeah, but it also has varying length episodes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not one of those shows where, like The Crown, where some episodes are like 45 minutes, and then some episodes are like an hour 10, and you're like, we don't need hour 10 ever.
Yeah. Definitely not.
Because I mean, a show like that, especially towards the end, is really padding out seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're really milking Princess Diana for all she's worth to get Debicki on screen, whereas Rivals is like pretty much paced perfectly as far as moving.
Oh yeah.
But letting characters grow and interact and mingle. It's a very smart thing.
And I understand like something like Buccaneers is a romance, or like Belgravia, they're coming up with it out of thin air because they don't have a source material to work with. But there, in those shows, even then with those short episodes, there's some circling of the wagon of like the romances, spinning the wheel of like will they, won't they. Here, there really feels like a trajectory from Tony landing Declan to work at Corinium towards Declan being on the other side opposing Corinium. There's like a long journey that goes on there over the 8 episodes.
Yeah, and I think when this show starts, and I think our individual power rankings throughout the episodes reflect a sense of Tony and Declan are unbeatable. And then in the back of your head, you're like, but why is Rupert around?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like a high school enemy with Tony. Like, what's going to happen? Mm-hmm. And then sure enough, like I thought, if you told me to predict the ending of the season in episode 1, I would say Tony and Declan come to blows or disagreements. Their rivalry begins at the end of the season.
Oh.
But instead, it's like halfway.
Rivalry is it's always heating up here. Overall, though, I've enjoyed the show. This first season, I really liked all the characters. I like how freewheeling the show is, especially with how chaste a lot of programming is getting these days. This is one that went against the grain. It's like we're going to have people having sex every episode. And not just for show, it's for fun, because it can be a fun thing to watch. And the way they kind of safeguard it is like, well, it was the 80s. It was a different time, which is, okay, that's fine. That works. And I appreciate that they are just, really leaning into, like, this is meant to be fun, even with encouraging cheating and stuff like that. Like, don't take it too seriously, what's going on here.
Yeah.
But Dave, have you enjoyed Rivals overall for the season?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's in the past we've ranked our shows overall, but I think at this point of the podcast, 7 years in, we need to start ranking like big shows and little shows.
Okay.
Because there are shows that are like Downton Abbey, The Crown, Poldark, that are these sagas. Mm-hmm. And, Bridgerton is catching up to that. But then there's shows like this, Buccaneers at this point, Belgravia, and Belgravia the next chapter that are sort of, Queen Charlotte's another one that are like tight stories. And I think this might be my favorite sort of short show that we've watched.
Yeah, it's just a ball. And it's that sense of propulsion, too, of things moving ahead. I also appreciated the cast. Like, this is a
great
stacked cast. Like, you can feel it sometimes in the Buccaneers or Belgravia where they're moneyballing it, where it's like, well, we got Tom Wilkinson for Belgravia for the first season. We got Eve, what's her name? The actress. I forget for Belgravia. But it's like we got 2 big stars, and then we're going to have some more unrecognizable people to fill it out.
Is that Alice Eve? Is that her name?
Alice Eve, yeah. For Belgravia. Or even for Buccaneers, it's like, well, we got
Christina Hendricks.
and Adam
Meester.
James. Leighton Meester's coming to it. But yeah, there's definitely a bunch of like, who's that person exactly?
Yeah, we need a name on the poster.
Yeah. Here, it's obviously, David Tennant is the huge star because everyone knows him as the Doctor, or at least a lot of people know him, especially in Britain, as the Doctor. You got Aidan Turner, Ross Poldark. Like, you feel like you're in good hands just by having the star power there.
Yeah. And it feels like there's not a lot of megastars, but there's a lot of people that you click their IMDb and you're like, oh my God, Cameron Cook has been in 1,000 things.
Right, you've recognized them from somewhere. You've seen them somewhere else. Even Rupert, Alex Hassel, you've seen him before, at least in The Boys or some other show. And it just feels like you appreciate that they shelled out for it. Same thing with the music for this,
Yeah.
Like they
very reminiscent of The Crown.
For sure, yeah. That's what it comes to mind is like the production value. Even if it doesn't look like the most glorious show you've ever seen in terms of the visuals, they spared no expenses trying to make this into a hit for Disney Plus or Hulu, whichever you watch it on.
And I think it goes without saying that the scenery is pretty, because you said it might not be the best looking show
in terms of how they shoot it.
Yeah, in relation to like The Crown or something more stylized like Bridgerton. Yeah. But this show does play with the, it's not a period drama in a sense that it's like Downton Abbey, but the house is literally the house from Poldark, but they make it look like some rundown, falling apart at the seams old house that's just full of character. So like they use this status symbol from the 1800s as a sort of reality check for the 1980s of like, this is what you get now. But maybe someday you can be Tony Baddingham with the obnoxious 80s ornate furniture and colors and animal
it's
print.
Kind of ugly today.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of storylines and characters here to talk about. Honestly, it's just bursting at the seams with people. Dave, what are your thoughts on Rupert? Because he's been on probably one of the biggest journeys of the characters in terms of, do you like him in the first few episodes?
No, we hated him.
That's the thing, is because we see that he's a cad and a cheater early on. He's a guy who carouses around with women, and then he is pretty handsy. He puts his hand where he shouldn't with Taggy, and it takes a while for them to get over that. But like by the end, he's more or less learned his lesson. He's being respectful of her space and trying to be a team player and helping out the other people, because you see them peel back the layers a little bit throughout the season, that has kids that he never sees. He's pretty much alone at his house, and this is kind of filling that void for him. Yeah.
And he has, and if we're going to talk about Rupert, we can say that there is still that hovering piece of information that Declan put in the fire. So there is some smoking gun waiting to have the trigger pulled in season 2. Like, I thought that would be the big that would be a cliffhanger at the end of the season, as Tony says, "Oh yeah, but what about X, Y, and Z?" Which shows how Rupert is terrible.
That's for something to pull out whenever they get the franchise or something like that. But it is funny though, like how halfway into the season, when Rupert goes on Declan's show to be interviewed, you are still kind of rooting for Declan, or at least I was, to nail Rupert, to try and like have this guy be apologetic for his behavior. But by the end of the season, I don't know if I would have that. I don't think I have that same feeling. I don't want him to be caught out because he's very aware of what he is. Everyone knows what he is. Why spoil it?
I don't want him with Taggy.
You still don't want him with Taggy?
No. Still think she's too young.
She is a little too young. Got to let her grow up a little bit. Because he's older. But at the same time, I don't want him wasting Cameron Cook's time, because she's too good of a person for him to waste her time on.
We see from her reactions in the last episode that she seems to think that that's a couple thing.
We'll see.
And we see from the way that he talks to Taggy, he's too intertwined with Cameron Cook for it to be an easy break.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, whenever that is.
The one last thing I'll say, though, is Hassel, the actor who plays him, very good, very charming, very confident in himself.
Yeah.
we see his dong in the first episode. We see the pecker.
Yeah, sure.
It's one of those things where it's like, I kind of wish I hadn't seen that. I mean, I get that that's part of his character in the book, at least, that he's allegedly well hung. But it's just like, I feel like I've seen him in ways that it's just like, you know, you just look at him a little bit differently. Like, okay, this guy really does walk the walk, I guess.
Well, it's an interesting show in that it's very fast and loose with female nudity, and pretty much every major female star that's not taggy, you see naked.
Right.
But the men, it's only the one male genitals you see. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's only in the first episode. But it was something that's like, you just don't see that in TV much. And especially in a British drama. So it's just like, man, we really know what Rupert's all about now. And it just feels perplexing is all. It's just like,
and is that I feel like that speaks more towards the double standard of television in general. Like, Aidan Turner's not taking. We're not going to see Aidan Turner's privates. We're definitely not going to see David Tennant.
Right, definitely not David Tennant. Aidan Turner, though, I was shocked by how much he bared his buns in the show, though.
Yeah, well, it's not the first time we've seen that either.
When have we seen his buns?
I think you see his behind in Poldark at least once, right?
I don't recall that.
Well, there's a lot
Listeners, correct us.
There's a lot of abs and
sure.
and love scenes in Poldark. Maybe I'm just conflating all of him and like Prince Philip in the first couple seasons of The Crown.
Well, why don't we shift our conversation to Aidan Turner and Declan? I can't believe this man is 42 years old. He does not look it. This dude is yoked.
I think he looks. I think 42 is the appropriate age for him.
Okay. It's the dark hair. He's got no grays, I guess, is the thing helping him.
Well, I don't know if that's the hands of time or
some help.
Some help.
Yeah. It's strange because at times, I mean, he's positioned as like almost the third lead on the poster, and that's how he is kind of spoken about on the show. But at times he feels further from the center than like Cameron Cook does, you know, in terms of plot lines and story. Because once his TV show goes away, he's the central thrust of like how we're going to get after Rupert and help Tony win this public war or whatever. But once he changes sides, he falls into the background a little bit in the back half of the season. Like, he's definitely helping to make sure that Venturer succeeds and all that. But beyond Maud hemming and hawing and whether to run away, we don't see as much with him, I feel.
Yeah, I think his focus shifts to being... You know, he goes from being the catalyst and the lightning rod for the show in the first couple episodes for Cranium success. And then when he falls back into Venturer, he starts to become more of the one hovering over Taggy. This sort of moral police, if you will.
Keeping Rupert away. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Is like, I think Rupert takes more of the center as the season goes along. I think that's true to the book too. Rupert's very much the focus of it, and his big rivalry is with Tony, and so Declan is now alongside him in that rivalry, but he's obviously not the 1A player. But I'm still glad we got what we got out of Aidan Turner, though. Charismatic as all hell.
I mean, it's it's disappointing to see how him and Maud, who is also Victoria Smurfit, a very compelling couple with a lot of sparks, but just on rinse and repeat, sort of like Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth in The Crown. Like, once we establish these two and their relationship and what the issues tend to be, and the same with Ross and Demelza on Poldark, it's like, okay, he's obsessed with work, she wants attention, she's jealous, and it's not until the last episode that we really see Maud grow and figure out what it is that she can do to advocate for herself without coming off like a 22-year-old immature girl.
And that is the one storyline. I said earlier that the show doesn't circle the wagon. That is the one where you do feel them maybe stretching it because there's not enough material in the book to keep it going for the whole season.
The way they stretch it is it's not a time killer.
No.
Maud is standing, she looks disappointed, walks away, Basil follows her and like touches her shoulder. They're not dwelling on this.
Yeah. I do appreciate, though, that she ends the season walking away. Because I think, just back to Poldark, and there's so many parallels between Ross and Declan in terms of how work comes first and their sense of duty towards others than their own marriage. I appreciate that Maud walks out, whereas Demelza, she did spend time away from Ross, but only after he may have cheated once or something, or she found out about something that he got up to. But Maud having the sense of self to be like, no, I'm putting myself first. I wish Demelza had done that in Poldark. I wish we had seen something like that.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I wanted to talk about this a little bit, and I guess we can kind of dive into it a little bit now. I think one thing about this show, and I think Maud, Rupert, and the other cheaters, there's a ton of cheaters on this show.
So many.
Poldark does a thing, and this is a spoiler for people that haven't watched Poldark, but hit fast forward a few times. Ross cheats on Demelza one time. And grapples with it. What?
Sure he doesn't do it twice? I feel like there's a second time.
I think he only cheats on her with, what's her name?
Well, yeah, who passes away, his girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah. And then, in turn, Demelza cheats on Ross one time. Yeah, and so it becomes a huge point of contention. And I know we talked about it a little bit last week, where we said, you know, it's the 80s. It's like cheating is everybody cheats, versus it's the 1880s. Nobody cheats. Yeah. So, you know, I think it's the morality of cheating in the show is something that needs to be discussed, I think.
Right. And because Declan, as we know, doesn't actually cheat on Maud throughout this season, but according to Maud, he is cheating on her with his mistress at his work. And so I think it's not even just the morality of cheating, because they pretty much have put that aside. Like, we all do it. It's more so just like having a successful relationship. How does one manifest that exactly when there's so many priorities in your life, and especially one where the men's rivalries supersede everything that's going on between them? But yeah, really enjoyed Aidan Turner on here.
Great, yeah, he's great.
Now, the third triumvirate of this rivalry is David Tennant's Tony Baddingham. And Dave, I don't think you're too familiar with David Tennant, are you?
Jessica Jones.
Oh, that's right. He was the bad
Jessica
guy.
Jones, Ahsoka.
He's in Ahsoka?
He's the robot.
Okay, yeah, that's a real stellar turn for his work there.
He really swings for the bleachers.
Yeah. He's a guy who likes to play to the rafters. I mean, that's why he did so well as a Doctor. He really goes big. He's a Scottish man. He likes to put on a show. I really bought into his anger on the show, and I think that's important, because I think that is the fuel to the rivalry. Because at times it feels like Rupert is almost in the position of, why do we keep doing this? Why is this still going on? Like, he hates Tony, but he's not trying to perpetuate this antagonism between them. It's really Tony trying to put Rupert out of business altogether, just get out of his life or just ruin him.
I think it's like, and they talk about it a little bit, where Tony's kind of a nepo baby, like shrimp who can't do anything, and Rupert's got the charisma, he's got the looks, he's got the physique, and he's got the athletic skills. So it's kind of the jock versus the nerd in adult form.
Sure.
Where you see this festering hatred of the fact that Tony's not pulling the same woman that Rupert is.
No.
Manifests itself professionally. And, you know, as someone that was in the marching band in high school, I can definitely say, like, you want to see yourself on Tony's team. But you start to realize that holding anger of that type,
you just got to let it go.
You got to let it go.
Yeah. What good is it doing you? You even see too that, like, Tony, everything about Tony's life is very well structured, that he worked hard to get where he is. Like, his relationship with Monica, it's not necessarily a loving one, and it definitely seems like she's someone who may have been more of a piece in him putting together, like, the perfect family than anything, because she really is there for him as a consultation and seems to just be a voice of reason for him that he doesn't have. Just a strong partner in crime, and he's wielding that power of Corinium that he has because he has nothing else. He's not part of the upper echelon of or upper crust of England like Rupert, and so this is the only thing he has to hold on to. And yeah, I just really the frustration of David Tennant comes through, and I feel that a lot.
Yeah, as does the sort of immaturity in that, and the ego.
Yeah,
and he plays a great bad guy.
Absolutely, he's so furious. So his relationship though with Cameron Cook is one of the more interesting aspects of the show, in that we know he brought her on because of her experience in New York and how successful she's been as a producer over there. And so she's like an ace in the hole. But we also see that he has feelings for her, or he likes to sleep with her at least, or it's kind of fuzzy that or it's maybe equally that he's invested in her, helping out with Corinium and doing the job there, or he actually wants to be with her.
Yeah, and we don't really get the origin story of how their romantic relationship began. Which is something I think the show would benefit from. If we had like one, not necessarily a flashback, but if you saw Cameron to say something like, I cannot resist a British man in a Versace shirt, I would be like, that's all I need. And it just feels like an abuse of power from the beginning. And the more it unfolds and you see there's the moment where Cameron's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And Tony is like, well, you're going to get a promotion if we keep this up. And you can see her sort of accept her fate and take it in her own hands.
Yeah.
But I want to know the beginning. What was the first time that he wooed her like?
That would be fun to see. But I feel like that helps with the unraveling of it all, of how we see, like, we don't know where exactly they started, but, like, this is what it is, and it's up to us to decide, like, how much is he genuine about this versus, like, is he playing her? Because if we see at the start that he was just, trying to work her over to begin with, then it's very clear. But I kind of enjoy the ambiguity there, and it's a little bit of both, I think.
Yeah, and we see in the Spain episode that he kind of, without any communication until the very last minute, leaves her high and dry.
Yeah.
And when Rupert's there.
Yeah.
And you can see how she falls for someone like Rupert, who's a bit of a player, because he makes himself emotionally available. Like, that's how a pickup artist works. Yeah, and that's Rupert to a T at this point. At least in his relationship with Cameron. And at first.
The funny thing with Tony, too, is, like, in the end, in that last episode where he sees the dog go over to Cameron, you know he's mad because he's understanding that she's hooking up with Rupert and he hates Rupert. But there's also, I think, the sense that he can't control her. After he had told everyone to not interact with Corinium, he's also just as mad that he can't keep her under his thumb to follow the rules. And so, like, it's all tied together.
Well, control is his whole thing because, when he says, I'll pay off your mortgage, Declan, you and me, we're going to ride this all the way to the moon. And you're like, all right, these guys are great. Like, this is a good relationship, and Declan is progressive, and we're going to nail Rupert on his dog-like behavior. And then all the thing that happens is Declan doesn't pull out the card and doesn't blast Rupert. And that winds up being massively popular. He's kind of like Vince McMahon. Like, if he's not solely responsible, he doesn't want anything to do with it.
Yep. Interesting character. Very, very compelling. And I hope that he's still around for next season. Yeah.
Something tells me, just based upon the smoking gun of the envelope about Rupert, I don't think we're done with him.
The other thing to consider, too, is, Rivals, I think, has done well as a show. But I think we get so wrapped up in it, we forget that if there's a season 2, you kind of have to have David Tennant's face on the poster, because I don't know if Aidan Turner and Alex Hassel are enough, and then the rest of the cast to be put on the poster. So they kind of need him to be there. But let's talk about Cameron Cook, though.
Yeah.
Because we've talked all about the headlining men. She is far and away the strongest woman on the show. She is the one stick up for herself and say, like, this is a job. I'm going to take advantage of Tony to further myself in the workplace. But we also see the other side of it when she lets her inhibitions down or lets her guard down for Rupert.
Or what about Patrick?
Well, has she let her guard down around Patrick? I think she's doing what Rupert should be, which is like, you are young.
Uh-huh.
I don't have time for your foolery. There was something funny about the idea of Rupert and Cameron leaving each other to go for significantly younger partners. But Cameron, though, I feel like I'm so glad that she's kind of like she's like the voice of reason for a lot of the characters. When Declan's a hothead, she's the one saying, like, we need to do this for the show. This is what works. Learn it. And gets his respect that way too.
And she says to Tony, we had huge ratings. Like, this is a win. Let him do it. It's still good. Where Tony's like, cut to commercial. Declan didn't screw Rupert.
Mm-hmm. She's always right. And she's the one who came up with the TV shows that work. It's just fun to see for a show that could more or less be overrun with all of its relationships of these rivalries and sexual trysts in the 80s, to have a strong black female in the workplace there. And they don't shy away from her being, abused and put to use for their own purposes. But just to see her kind of pave her own way, it's heartening to see, at least in a show like this. That doesn't even have to go that route.
And she's definitely, I think, in a show where you have Sarah Stratton, some of these minor characters that are being basically played like pawns for men and for all of these other people, to have Cameron sort of take that trope of sleeping with my boss, sleeping with the competition, flirting with my work rival or, my work coworker's little son, like, to take those and empower herself with that.
Yeah.
Is really good writing.
Absolutely, because you see the way they could go early on in the show where they have that night, that evening dinner, and she feels unwelcome there. And then they even kind of other her and say, like, oh, this black lady's coming to dinner with us tonight, and she doesn't really want to stick around there. But the next episode's New Year's, and she doesn't want to stick at the station with the Deidre and the other losers. She's like, I'm going to go party. And she just shows up and
that's it.
Has a good time all on her own, So she's the major female character. We've already talked about Maude. There's not much to talk about with her, but Taggy, though.
Damn, Taggy.
What do you think about that Taggy?
I don't like Taggy. I think Taggy's probably the character.
Just tell us how you really feel.
I think Taggy is the character who's given. She's put on the pedestal, but she shows her immaturity, and I think it's on purpose. But I still don't like it.
Okay.
Like, it feels like an easy character to sort of have in that spot, and it's a spot that I don't think is entirely necessary for a show like this.
The challenge with her character is, beyond being Declan's daughter and naive, she's not terribly well defined. She's not going to school. Doesn't really have a job. She just likes to cook. That's her interest, and so she's kind of.
Does she like to cook, or is she just good at it?
I think both. I think it's both those things. But she's kind of just floating in this, like, post-grad, if she were in college, post-grad, unknown time of, like, what to do with her life. And so it's kind of like the timing's right for someone like Rupert to strike to win over an impressionable young girl. But we do see flashes of her being more assertive, saying that she doesn't want to serve food to the people that are hunting because she doesn't agree with hunting, and helping to canvas because she knows she can, do that. But
I just want her to have more of a sense of self,
more agency.
Yeah.
Because there are good moments where she tells Rupert, "That's not cool. You can't do that. You can't use Cameron Cook. You can't just
just grab women." Yeah,
but it also feels a little reactionary too, of just like how you should react in that moment. So I appreciate her that she has decent chemistry with Rupert. I hope they do more to define who she is, though, next year, beyond just, like, being Rupert's object of affection.
Yeah, and I think it's a situation where you don't want to make her some savant But she needs to offer something to the plot aside from romance for me to really care a lot about her. And it could be something like she comes up with a show idea that's a smash hit.
Something like that.
Period. This is a show that operates very loosely with the characters and what they do. Like Lizzie Veriker, she's a housewife who used to be a writer, and then at one point they're just like, pull the trigger. She's a very talented romance writer. The show doesn't need to do that, but it doesn't.
Yeah. I would say she's the third biggest female on the show behind Cameron and Taggy. She has her own story. And she has the perspective on what's going on around her. She can see that everyone's shacking up with each other. She just can't bring herself to do it. And it's more entertaining because we do see her take meaningful small steps. Her beginning to write that novel because Freddie Jones is encouraging her to do it. Her going forward with the show with James, but then feeling it out along the way, like, this isn't right. He's cheating on me with Sarah. I know this, which all leads to that final episode where she's like, I'm going to go with Freddie because that's what makes me feel good, and I know myself. And it really is a sense of discovery for her of what she really wants and what makes her happy. Which I appreciated that ride. I thought it was really intriguing to go there because you know that she was going to end up with Freddie eventually, but the way in which they navigated to get there with like a little bit of tenderness, I'd say, I really appreciate that they took their time with that.
Yeah, and we can talk. I mean, I think Freddie comes into his own as a character throughout the course of the show as the third man adventurer, just as being like a nice guy who does good business.
I clocked him early in that third episode, Dave, when I said, like, he gave that chocolate bar to Lizzie. Like, this is a decent dude, and it was too soon for you to put him on your rankings. But I was like, I think there's something with this Freddie guy.
Yeah,
I wonder if he keeps the chocolate bar in his pants still.
Probably.
Yeah,
and we see. Not? I mean, I think Freddie and his wife and the Strattons are two very comparable. Like, they just don't love each other.
Yeah.
I think most of the couples in this show just don't love each other.
No, that's the drama, is they're not with the ones they want to be with, really. Because, is there one happy couple? And that's the other funny thing about this show. There doesn't seem to be much chemistry between these couples that we see. Like, obviously, the love is dead between Tony and Monica.
And Monica.
Declan and Maude, they may actually have
their spark is the brightest.
But you feel it dimming, which is the key thing. You feel it going away. Lizzie and James, I don't see how they ever became an item.
And James and Sarah Stratton, I don't even really see.
Well, Sarah's really thrown herself at him.
Yeah, it's just like good-looking people who are good-looking. You know, it doesn't seem to be much more than that.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know if it's just an element of the casting or just intentionally that they tried to have these couples not display much affection. But it works in terms of us cheering them on to sleep with other people, though, at least.
Yeah.
So,
like we had a long discussion on this podcast about whether or not Maude was right or Declan was right, and the fact that it was even a discussion that a workaholic and a serial cheater potentially are on the same moral ground is just not the way society works. So the show does a good job of making you okay with adultery.
That is a small miracle of the show. I think that covers the big swaths of the show, right? Is there anything else we haven't really covered to talk about?
Not really. I mean, we could just like say characters' names and be like, oh, I acknowledge Charles. I acknowledge...
I appreciate that they didn't go the direction I thought with Charles, where he was getting sick in the early episodes, and given this is the 80s, I was like, don't tell me they're going to shoehorn an HIV
and there's still season 2.
Sure. But the way they developed him as someone who wants to work with Venture and kind of lean into his gossipy aspects, I thought that was a fun use of him. I'm glad they came around to that.
Yeah. But I mean,
apparently he's entirely a creation for the show. If I read somewhere correctly, he's actually not in the book, so
okay,
it's pretty cool.
Cool. I don't know, like what other characters there are to talk about.
The Strattons. I mean,
they're just there.
They're there.
They're warm bodies.
Sarah's entertaining for, her aloofness and but her own little gains that she makes. But she's never the focus of the show necessarily, aside from a handful of scenes. One thing I will say though, the worst thing about this season though, is that we see the one producer on the show, Daisy.
Oh yeah,
who works for Cranium, and she's nice and innocent, she's naive, and she's just wanted to say hello to that actor because she was smitten with him, and they hook up, and then he ignores her. Oh, that's a shame. But the scene with her and the Reverend and her getting raped, it was just completely a stretch, I think. I understand you want to see Declan punch a Reverend on TV, and that was enjoyable. That was fun to see. I didn't appreciate the lengths it took to get there, and then the way they just disposed of Daisy thereafter. Like, keep that character around if you're going to try and do something with her. Don't just...
Yeah, she should be the first one on the train to venture her.
For sure. Absolutely. Not Seb, who we barely saw, and just needs a new hairdo that's not just puffed up. So that was the only really, really sour note I found in the season. And aside from Rupert's groping Taggy, but we've gotten past that. They've done the work. So
yep.
We have power rankings though for the season, right, Dave?
We do. If this is your first time on the ride with us, every episode we end with power rankings, and I have tabulated both yours and mine in one master sheet. So if you had a bad week, negative points; good week, positive points. And we have compiled the whole season, so we have 24 characters.
Ooh. That's a bit smaller than some of the shows that we do.
But season one. Season one is always like a nice little handful. Mm-hmm. So, at the bottom of the barrel, in third place, it's a tie with -6 points. Do you have any idea who one or both of these characters are?
Is one of the Strattons?
It's Lord Stratton is one of them.
Okay.
Which I'm shocked that we both even had the wherewithal to rank him.
I think it was like early in the season. We didn't know all the characters, and he had a bad week because his wife was cheating on him.
Yeah, 2 weeks in a row, right?
Yeah, something like that. Well, I don't know who he'd be tied with at the bottom there, or at number 3.
Maud.
Wow, okay. I thought Maud had a little bit more going for her than that, but she's so negative Nancy throughout the season. I hate to use that cliche, but she is so negative. It's like, can anything go right for her? So, sorry,
we
Maud.
want Maud to be happy, but we know that Maud is not responsibly trying to be happy.
Right.
She's not going about it the right way.
Yep. So, sorry.
And I think she ends the season on a positive note because she's
turned the boat around.
Yeah. So good for her for ending the season well. Lord Stratton, I don't know, not so much. Mm-hmm. Little jump from -6 to second place, -8.
Whew. Okay, that's not that big of a jump. I feel like Taggy didn't do enough.
Bingo, Taggy.
Really? She's negative. Okay.
I was shocked she was second place.
You thought she'd be higher, or not?
I thought she'd be in the middle.
Yeah, I just think about it in terms of the events of the season. She's often on her back foot with reacting to what Rupert has done or what Declan's doing.
And I think that speaks to what we said about her being sort of not a real great character. Like,
right. And
she's reacting to the man she has a crush on sleeping with somebody else. Or she goes to a bunch of teenage boys and they bully her. You know?
And it may be purposeful that she's created that way, but at the moment it's like she's just kind of put upon and it's tough.
Yeah. So this might be historic.
Okay.
Second place to first place. -8 points to -24 points.
Well, he was leading pretty far from me, and I think it's Tony.
It's Tony.
So when I was assessing, like, man, he's so much lower than I thought. It kind of reminds me of like the cartoons where the bad guy loses at the end of every episode. He has a plan. He's going to enact it. But as soon as Declan flips the switch, things start going wrong for Tony. It always feels like he's playing catch-up to what they're doing to try and get one over on them. And so he never really wins. He doesn't come out ahead.
For the episode, I have my single episodic breakdowns here. Mm-hmm. I have episode 3, episode 6, episode 7, and episode 8. So half the season he is the worst character in that given episode. And I think you brought up about his anger. The fact that we see him being angry so much is very reflective upon what kind of character he is. You don't win by screaming.
No, he's always behind.
So on the flip side, a little bit more of a tighter spread, obviously. Third place, 12 points in the green.
Is it Freddie?
Freddie is fourth place with 10 points in the green.
Okay. Is it Lizzie?
Nope, it's Cameron Cook.
Okay, sure. You know, she did the work. She's well respected, well appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, she's taking all of these tropes that Taggy is sort of falling victim to, and growing from them and taking advantage of them, and then spewing them out into the world of like, I am an empowered woman, I am an immigrant, I am a person of color, I am sleeping with my boss, but I'm still the best at what I do. 4 men went to plow.
It's true. She won an award for it. So yeah, hats off to her making it to number 3.
So number 2, 2-point jump from 12 to 14.
Is our boy Declan?
It's Declan.
I mean, come on. He wins a lot on this show. Aside from losing Maude, his TV show is a smash hit. He punches a few people. He's on the winning side of the adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, good on Declan. I mean, we can't help ourselves. We like Aiden Turner in these shows being a man's man.
Mm-hmm. And a 3-point jump to 17 in the green. Who do you think is number 1?
It's got to be Rupert.
It's Rupert. You know for a fact that we did not like him.
Right.
So the fact that he dominates the season in such a fashion is surprising, but also it shows that we can be objective when it comes to ranking.
Can't deny the man. He's got something going for him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll stand behind that.
Yeah,
Rupert wins the season.
Rupert wins the season. Tony loses the season. Tony might be dead.
Yeah. We'll see.
We'll see.
And we don't know when the show is coming back, but I'm pretty sure they did renew it for a second season, so it's only a matter of time.
Yeah.
Oh wait, there was a filming update. I'm just checking.
Okay.
And they really don't. They haven't seen any scripts yet. Great. Okay.
Okay.
So that's the update.
So it's going to be a while.
It seems like it.
But we'll be here for season 2. This is great.
And so maybe it's next year. Maybe it's in between Gilded Age seasons and everything else. So that works out for us. Well, yeah, we haven't been watching much in between the 2 days, or in between the days.
Less than 2 days. Yeah. It's been 23 hours.
Right.
So before we get the plugs, one prediction for season 2 of Rivals.
Tony's alive.
Okay.
Season 2 though. Lizzie gets involved in the network in some way.
Okay.
Her relationship with Rupert turns into her writing a show or something along those lines, making use of her talent. That's what I'm predicting.
Okay.
How about you, Dave?
I said one prediction last week that I think Cameron Cook stays with Corinium.
Okay.
I'm going to say the one thing that we said already, but I think Charles or the other guy, his boyfriend, get AIDS.
Okay, I would not predict that. I don't want to put that energy.
I don't want to predict it, but I feel like Charles is supposed to be this like ever chipper in the face of a mother with dementia and all this. I think something sad is going to happen because that seems to be a trope in ensemble shows with token gay characters as they suffer.
I hope not. But we'll see.
And I think Maud's play is a hit. Maud becomes a star again.
That'd be fun. I'd like to see that. I think they wrap her into some TV show. I think everyone comes back to this Ventura Network in some way.
They should
to help out. So in terms of what we're watching next, we understand the Buccaneers is coming back in June. We don't know for sure when Gilded Age is coming back, but it is coming back soon. So we got to figure out some way to kill a couple months.
Now, I would typically say let's do some Downton throwbacks, but that's 8 Downton throwbacks. I think we should find another quick hit show. Maybe Dr. Thorne. Oh, that Mr. Bates show. Okay.
It's on Netflix.
Let's if you're listening to this and you have an idea, let us know because it matters and your opinion matters. If it wasn't for the opinion of the Lords of Grantham listeners, we would probably never have watched Poldark. We never would have watched The Buccaneers. So it really is power's in your hands.
Maybe Paddington will be available for us to watch. Catch up on that.
Finally.
To kill some time. But until then, I will be flying. I will be on the other side of the world.
Enjoy. Have fun on your trip.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah. Be in South Korea for 11 days, and I will just be waking up while everyone's going to sleep. And that's
exciting.
All I do. Yeah, I'm so excited. But until then, you know where to find us, lordsgrantham@gmail.com. Hit us up on our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We leave a 5-star rating and review on our iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to us. We have our Podbean website with our entire archive of episodes. Otherwise, we will catch you next time on the pod.